Yes, Rastafari, give thanks.
Guys, it's Rastafari, live, rule, and reign.
Forever and forever. We give thanks to Jazzmark and, as I mentioned, a topic, the 30th of June 1936. And I just like start by just reciting a psalm, because it was really what took place. And it's Psalms 2. Because it
But
says, yeah, go ahead.
before you jump in, because I know it's so exciting, I would still have to take the time to introduce the heights and
Yes,
to
I.
just welcome ones to this platform. This is the Association of Rastafari Creatives. I will be your host for today. My name is Chazmach Kwasi. I have been given the distinct pleasure and honor by His Imperial Majesty to be the convener of this association of creatives. And today I'm going to welcome one of our Rastafari stalwarts, one of our Rastafari scholars, historians, and a person who has influenced my journey. I'm on journey personally. I can say that publicly, that this is one of the brethren that inspire I as a young Ras who was called to the Nyahbinghi order and met this brethren orating at such a level I had not seen in the universities of Babylon. Going to university and sitting in on lectures and going to, cultural events. But this was one of the most astounding presenters, even up until the present time, that I've had the honor to see. I've known this brethren for decades, over decades now, almost 2 decades. And he has never wavered in his advocacy for the Rastafari faith and for the Rastafari culture. So to all of our Rastafari creative membership, all of our Rastafari creative allies, Rastafari just in general everywhere, it gives Iman the great pleasure to welcome Ras Ivai Tafari. Ras Ivai, now there I can properly bless us with a song before we get into this historic topic.
We say, behold how good and how pleasant it is for I and I, brethren and sistren, to dwell together in love and unity. It is like the precious ointment upon the head that ran down upon the beard, even Aaron's beard that went down to the skirt of his garment. It is like the dew of Hermon, the dew that descended upon the mountains of Zion. For there the Most High, Kadamawi Haile Selassie the First, had commanded his blessing, even love and life, forever and forevermore. And as we go forward into this discourse, we just ask of His Majesty and Her Majesty to be in our midst and to just give I and I the word, the sound, the power to reflect on such a very historic moment in the history of the world, not just Ethiopia, in the history of the world. But we will start with this psalm because this psalm kind of sum up everything, as to what took place. And David asked the question, why do the Eden rage and the people imagine vain things? The false kings of the earth all set themselves and the rulers stay count together against the Almighty Jah Rastafari and against his anointed, saying, come, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. But he that sitteth in his heaven shall laugh. The Almighty Jah Rastafari shall have them in the region. For then shall he speak unto them in his wrath, and he shall vex them in sore displeasure. For yet have I said, I kings upon the holy mountain of Zion, I will now declare decree. The Almighty I, Rastafari, hath said unto I and I, thou art thy son, this day have I begotten thee. Now ask of I, and I will give thee then for thine inheritance, and the uttermost part of the earth for their possession. Jah shall break them in pieces, dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. So be wise now, therefore, ye kings, be instructed, ye false judges of the earth. Serve the Almighty with fear, rejoice and tremble. Kiss I and I the Son, lest he be angry, but perish from his ways when his wrath is kindled but a little. Blessed be all they that put their trust in the Almighty I, Jah Rastafari. So, give thanks to Jazzmark. June 30th, what a moment in world history. And, you know, if a pretext just to make one's overstand, because sometimes we take it for granted that everyone does, and it is not so. Because His Majesty appearance at the league came about on account of a unprovoked, unjust, malicious, intentional war orchestrated by Pius XI and Mussolini and his armies. You know, because these people sit down and look at Ethiopia, the only independent sovereign nation of the world. And I wonder why nobody not take it. How this prize position country in the horn of Africa, with all its location to all the satellite band of communication lines, the source of the Nile. There I see the land where, you know, the great historians talk about, the land of the gods. When all the historians talk about Ethiopia, it's like it's the place to be.
Yes.
Then why any of the colonizers not just go feet? Why everybody else gone with Zimbabwe and Kenya and all the other places in Africa? And this one little prize land mentioned 30 odd times in the Bible, you know, in the biblical accounts of God's people. Why nobody not go take it? So you must know these guys sit down and plan. We know their conference, the Berlin conference, them sit down.
I was just going to say that. Yes, I was just going to interject and say from that time. And as Rastafari creatives, Rasaiva, we don't have to hold anything back, because we have to talk about this throne of Peter that was set up in Rome, and that contrast between the actual throne of David, which the prophecy had set up as the throne that would govern the earth. So the Pope had a problem, because he is claiming to be the supreme authority on the throne of Peter, which Peter was never given a throne.
But listen, my brother in England was looking at a video, a live thing in England. I don't know if it did ever feed to Jamrock, but it was when one of the popes was to ascend office after one of the death of, I don't know if it's Paul VI, then the other pope. And he said, here, looking at the video, there was like a big sound, boom, boom, and a voice say, and now the Pope of Rome is about to ascend the throne of David. And him say, which part? In a Rome? No, that could not be, because these guys know that the original authority of David's throne rests in Ethiopia. So even though them have fooled themselves and talk about Peter, who is Peter compared to Christ, the Davidic family? So they know the supreme authority of throne room rests in the rainbow circle throne room of Emperor Haile Selassie I in Ethiopia. They know this.
And remember that during the Berlin Conference 1884-85, this is when the Italians occupied Massawa. And this is where they started. So it was promised to them at the conference, because prior it was occupied by the British, who had conquered the Egyptians, the Ottoman Empire that had held stake on that sea coast. And now that the conference, they lobbied and were given the rights to get not only Somalia, which was Italian Somaliland, but Ethiopia. However, they were thwarted at the Battle of Adwa from claiming that prize that they had advocated for in those councils in Europe. And now that leads us to 1936, Ras Ivai, where we have... Yes, go ahead.
Can you see we are going to
1935, where we have the largest invasion of the African continent in the modern era, up to 300,000 Italian soldiers that were brought in to conquer Ethiopia, showing us they didn't plan to leave. This was them taking their stake for the Ark of the Covenant.
In the promised land.
In the promised land.
A land flowing with milk and honey. That's what Muslims sweet them up with, you know. A land flowing with milk and honey. So
these are documented. This is documented, yes.
Of course.
Go ahead.
So even from Adwa, you know, remember, I was at school just the other day doing some CXC. So they were cleaning up and throwing out books. So I said, no, these books shouldn't be thrown away. I gave them to a brethren to go into the country parts and distribute these books to the youths who needed books and do our virtual spaces. So I found a box filled with bottle stoppers. I was telling some teachers that after the victory of Ethiopia over Italy in Adwa, the classrooms, the kindergarten classrooms, probably primary too, had children bringing in bottle stoppers each day. So teacher tell, bring as many bottle stoppers as you all can bring, and you know, every child save all them bottle stoppers and bring them into class. So they packed them up in groups of 10, and they counted them in groups of 10 until they reached 6 million.
Wow.
You know, at the end of 6 million, them say, well, these are our people who were killed by Hitler.
Wow.
So when Italy and all them guys now see these things, them say, oh, we now are going to go for Ethiopia. So, and then they taught the children to hate Ethiopia from kindergarten. So many of these soldiers who went were groomed against Ethiopia from the time of that defeat. So Mussolini and Graziani and the Buono and the whole of them, they were at a mindset, we must avenge this victory. So 1935 was the day when them, the date and time when them say, yeah, we are ready. And Pope Pius XI blessed the armies. And for ones who don't know, these things are documented on videos, as I said earlier. Seeing Pius blessing the armies, seeing women taking off them wedding band and putting a pot in the square. Men and women line up by the thousands, giving up their gold wedding bands because Mussolini needed every finance he could get to buy all the arms, to get all the poison gas, to get all the banned things that were banned from treaties of war, because this will not be another Adwa. They were singing these in songs. They were prepared. They were writing poetry. These guys were singing on the ships, going off with the blessing of the Pope to Ethiopia. So we have to set the pretext now as to how this war started. Because remember, Our Majesty had been agitating, and how wise was our father, Haile Selassie I. You see, just by he joining the league,
speak on it.
Ethiopia admitted as a member of the league, that was his farsightedness, shaping rather than waited upon events, as Leonard Mosley wrote. You know, the king knew what was around the corner, so he made sure Ethiopia, who was an isolated territory in Africa, decided now through the initiative and wise mind of Rastafari to join the world body, the League of Nations.
I want to just interject a legal point here. As an attorney, you have to agree on the jurisdiction of law in order to render justice and judgment, which is this event name. You have to agree on a jurisdiction to be fair.
Yes.
So by becoming a member of the League of Nations now, the jurisdiction for that world judgment, or for setting the stage, His Majesty is setting the stage so that when he pronounces that judgment, it is according to the standard that they themselves have set.
Yes,
This is a very important point when we talk about the admission to the League of Nations. One of the biggest things they tried to use against Ethiopia was that Ethiopia still had slavery, which is why they tried to ban Ethiopia from joining the League. But here's a twist, plot twist. His Majesty was able to, by edict, he was very hard on slave traders, punishing slave trading by death in the world. Italy was one of the nations that advocated for Ethiopia to join the League. And His Majesty addresses it in the speech, which we're going to jump to in a short moment, because that admission was Italy still plotting to try to lull Ethiopia to sleep. And there were several other conventions that were signed after Ethiopia's admission to the League that Italy and Ethiopia signed. So this betrayal that we're going to touch, because I'm going to read some sections of the speech.
Yes, man.
And
very
I want you to comment on your thoughts of the speech. Also, we have to put it into the Pan-African context. At the time that we're speaking, there were no other independent African nations on the planet.
On the planet, yes.
Yes, with the exception of Haiti, but Haiti was under restriction because by that time they were under American stewardship Haiti, you could argue. So,
Yes, I.
you know, objectively speaking, in 1930s, there was no other Liberia, which is sometimes cited, we know was also an American protectorate.
Exactly,
So to
exactly.
speak.
So the only
So,
true sovereign African nation was Ethiopia.
yes,
And,
So this is, go ahead.
and then again, after joining the league, you know, against the odds, because, you know, traditionally we have said, oh, Ethiopia have to stay as it is and go join up with them white guys. But Her Majesty's farsightedness won that position as a member.
Yes.
And then in 1928, signed a treaty of friendship with Italy
Yes.
also.
Speak
So,
on it, my brother.
so Her Majesty was setting Ethiopia in a position that if you touch her, because he knew what was in the back of their minds, you know. So, like playing a chess game, he set up all his barriers to say, listen, all right, and we sign a treaty of friendship, and he signed that treaty, and Mussolini signed on to it too. Italy signed on to it, and then that treaty now would have made Italy in a position where they would not be able to invade, or if they invade Ethiopia, they would have violated. Just as in the covenant of the league, once a member of the league was under attack, it could, and it should not even be under attack from another member state.
Yes.
So all in violation. The treaty of friendship with Italy, the treaty with the league, all in violations. So Her Majesty positioned Ethiopia strategically. If these guys were to stand for truth and what they said out of their mouth, and they be true to it, Ethiopia would have been safely guarded. But they were not about this. As the Indians say, the white man speak with a forked tongue.
I'm going to read the opening passage, and I want to just get your comment because, again, this is a prophetic pronouncement. Haile Selassie stands for might of the Trinity, or power of the Trinity. So I want our viewers to keep that in mind. I want to greet everyone. This is the Association of Rastafari Creatives. I'm your host, the Chazmach Kwasi. This is Ras Ivai Tafari, and we're talking and examining His Majesty's speech to the League of Nations. Is it a day that Rastafari should celebrate? Is it a day that the world should remember? How do we treat this day? We're going to touch all of that in this event. Feel free to share your comments below. We'll try to get to any questions as well. And we're going to now jump into the appeal to the League of Nations. Glory to word, glory to sound, glory to the power of the Most High, His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I, I, Haile Selassie I, of Emperor of Ethiopia, am here today to claim that justice which is due to my people, and the assistance promised to it 8 months ago when 50 nations asserted that aggression had been committed in violation of international treaties. There is no precedent for a head of state himself speaking in this assembly, but there is also no precedent for a people being victim of such injustice and being at present threatened by abandonment to its aggressor. Also, there has never before been an example of any government proceeding to the systematic extermination of a nation by barbarous means in violation of the most solemn promises made by the nations of earth that there should not be used against innocent human beings the terrible poison of harmful gases. It is also to defend a people struggling for its age-old independence that the head of the Ethiopian Empire has come to Geneva to fulfill this supreme duty after having himself fought at the head of his armies.
Rastafari, beloved, that speech. But you see, even prior to that, the Jazzmark,
yes,
how did His Majesty went to the League of Nations? Because we still have to set that tone, you know, before that speech, you know. Because, you know, remember, he was on the battlefield. And we have to make people realize that as an emperor, he never does sit down upon him lofty throne of David. That's a king from him crown. Never sit upon throne, you know. He had no time for the throne more than state events, you know. He
Yes,
was
sir.
out there in the field, at school, at the hospital to watch surgery, out in the agricultural area, out in the textile industry. He was all over the empire. He was a worker. When the workers had to work for roads, he was out there assisting, instructing. So he wasn't a king who make him bed control. He was up and around his community, ensuring that Ethiopia, he inherited with 1,000 millions of illiterates. One of his first priority as emperor was to up education.
Yes.
So during the war years, Her Majesty himself led his armies onto the battlefield. Now just look, these guys in America, these presidents, what them do? Them sit down and send your children to battle. Them never go themselves. But Her Majesty as King of Kings, as Lion of Judah, as a spiritual head of the Orthodox Church, defender of the faith, went himself personally onto the battlefield alongside his armies. And
And I want to, let me stick a pin. He was the last head of state to ever fight at the head of his army in war in history. We have generals like Eisenhower, who became head of state after having been a general.
Yes.
But he was the last in an ancient tradition of Israelite kings and kings of the nations to sit at the head of the army while sitting as the head of state of the nation. Kamawi Haile Selassie. Continue, please.
Oh, great thou art. So we remember His Majesty having fought on the battlefield relentlessly, you know, giving instructions. And if it was not for traitors, it would have been another Ottawa. It would have been another Ottawa if there were not Ethiopians who sided with the Italians, you know. So Her Majesty in that last battle of Mysore, when His Majesty said, let's attack before they got any reinforcement, the army said, no, Your Majesty, we are wounded, we can't. And writers who were there closely say if they had just listened to the emperor, they would have defeated that stronghold in Mysore, and then they would have had all that arms to attack the other fortification, and it would have been another bloodbath and a victory for Ethiopia. But having lost that key battle, they all decided that the army should retreat back to Ethiopia, back to Addis Ababa to reorganize. Then, you know, the enemies were advancing. Then they had this meeting, and the Crown Council decided in a vote of 21 to 24 that the Lion of Judah should represent Ethiopia's case before the world body, the League of Nations. And when they decided, you know, and brought the finding to His Majesty, his answer was to bring out the great drums of Menelik, and that his decision is to fight a guerrilla warfare, blessed with all the mountain fortresses that God has blessed Ethiopia with. So His Majesty was very reluctant to leave the battlefield, contrary to many ones who are carrying the narrative that His Majesty ran away from Ethiopia. And, oh, he was a coward. No, Her Majesty was adamant that no, I should not leave. We should fight a guerrilla warfare. We should resort to the mountains, into the Lalibellas, into all the different fortresses we have, and attack with that guerrilla warfare strategy we are known for. But no, the council said you must go to Geneva. So Her Majesty would have told these people, and in his writing, it was the most painful day in his life when he had to leave the holy mountains to go to Geneva.
Yes,
so we knew he left reluctantly. There were generals of the army who said, Janai, are you not a son of Theodore? To say to him, say, where you go? Theodore rather death before this honor. Where you leave? There were generals who decided to them are going to intercept the train. That His Majesty don't board that train to leave. There I see it. Even when the Empress and family boarded the train, he was not on the train, because then he had other things to do. He have to remove the capital. He have to talk to Ras Imru and all the other generals to say, listen, move the capital out of Addis, go to Gore, establish the capital. Final words. Let him catch the train at the next station, to the relief of the Empress and others who knew then, yes, the Lion of Judah is safe. Once he's safe, Ethiopia is safe. So it was a painstaking departure
Yes, and it's like
for Haile
chess.
Selassie the
As
first.
long as the king is on the board, and this is global chess, as long as the king is on the board, the nation is not conquered. The game is still in play. Also, I think
Selassie.
this exile connected him with his diaspora. We have been exiled for over 400 years. His Majesty experienced 5 years of exile in a foreign land, having
Yes.
to go through the cold winters of England,
Oh my
and
God.
feel that pain that we as the diaspora felt having been exiled for our country. So he lived that diaspora experience for a time
Yes,
as the creator of heaven and earth. So we really give thanks for that exile, and you're setting the table so beautifully. We're going to jump back into the speech. I want everyone here, go to
No.
www.rastafari.creatives.com, leave a message here. The full presentation will be available for our members on our website. We're creating an ecosystem for Rastafari creatives to have these discussions that don't happen in regular forums around the internet. You know, we see everything being discussed, but sometimes we as Rastafari creatives who are putting out the message to the people, we need that substance so that we know that we can feed the people the right messages. When you hear Anthony B say fire upon Rome, there's a reason that he had to burn that fire. When Chronic said, it's nothing very walk in a room and start a fire. Why are they saying these things? We have to put the context to
Yes.
why we burn Rome.
Yes.
You know, metaphorically, we know that the Italian people loved Ethiopia, a lot of them, and even up to this day, you know, over 100,000 Italians went to see Bob Marley in concert in Rome. So we know that the people were misled, but we have to acknowledge the atrocities, the betrayal, and the calculation, because the other thing I want to mention, this was not just Italy. The nations had set embargoes on Ethiopia, preventing them from importing weapons. And this was a double cross because of their support for the appeasement of Mussolini and Hitler, and trying to make Ethiopia the sacrificial lamb, so to speak. And they refused to sell His Majesty arms while Italy was manufacturing arms by the day. They also, the Standard Oil Company, which was a big American oil company, was supplying the Italians with their oil reserves. And it is said if the Americans had cut off the oil supply, the Italian efforts would have had to stop almost immediately. So this is also global white supremacy that we are combating. And we don't want to just pinpoint the Italians and the Pope. This was a move to extinguish the light of Black Africa, Pan-African Africa, and to put them under the heel of colonialism. Had they succeeded, every African soul would have been under the foot of this terrible white supremacy. The Lion of the tribe of Judah had prevailed. Rasai Vai, please.
Listen, England was a snake on the grass too, you know.
Yes.
England, there was a snake on the grass. Yes, they gave him amnesty. Yes, he came into England. He got that kind of stay in England, and he chose Bath. Bath, where His Majesty went and bought that house in Fairfield. Bath is an old Roman town. So check the strategic location. His Majesty went and sit in the town of Rome. When Rome did a rule, England, and that's how him go to go fight Rome, you know, in Bath, yeah? But Anthony Eden called the Ethiopian ambassador to tell him, to implore him, to besiege him, that the emperor should not address the League of Nations. It has been unprecedented for a head of state to address the League. But what I Majesty say, there was no one else who could have addressed the League in the manner in which he might address it, as a man who had been on the battlefield himself, because prior to he had his envoys with preliminary meetings with the League, but he was on the battlefield, and not just on the battlefield, he was fighting. The videos are there, you see him around the big guns, a lick playing out the sky. He was giving expert advice, you know, at times when them start drop the gas will burn the skin, the flesh of the Ethiopians who were barefoot warriors, His Majesty advised them for a special tree that had a leaf that them could have just put it onto them foot bottom, and that would have rid them of that gas that was sprayed on the ground. And I remember His Majesty having fought there now, he was on the battlefield, going out into the open space after the bombs were dropped and taking back bombs into the caves, writing off serial numbers of these white guys running out of the caves, and others because them say the Lion of Judah come with a bomb. Who goes onto the battlefield and pick up a bomb and take it back to where you are sitting? They were running, they were saying, His Majesty, it's a bomb! It's a bomb! As if they didn't know, he realized that it's a bomb. Yes, it could have exploded, but he was firm in resolve. He went out there, take up this bomb, write the serial number down. Where was it made? Because he was gathering his evidence to prove at the league that, listen, you, England, you didn't make that bomb. Yeah, Germany, or whatever country it was made, he had all information who was behind the pack against Ethiopia.
Stick a pin, because I want to just read this section here as what you're saying. His Majesty says in the speech to the nation, the very refinement of barbarism consisted in carrying ravage and terror into the most densely populated parts of the territory, the points furthest removed from the scene of hostilities. The object was to scatter fear and death over a great part of the Ethiopian territory. These fearful tactics succeeded, men and animals succumbed. The deadly rain that fell from aircraft made all those who it touched fly shrieking with pain. All those who drank the poisoned water or ate infected food also succumbed in dreadful suffering. In tens of thousands of victims of the Italian mustard gas fell. In order to denounce to the civilized world the tortures inflicted on the Ethiopian people, that I resolved to come to Geneva, none other than myself and my brave companions in arms could bring the League of Nations the undeniable proof. The appeals of my delegates addressed to the League of Nations had remained without any answer. My delegates had not been witnesses. That is why I decided to come myself to bear witness against a crime perpetuated against my people and give Europe a warning of the doom that awaits them if it should bow to before the accomplished fact.
Very prophetic. Here is a king, come prove to the world that I'm not just a king, I'm a prophet of modern time. Because as His Majesty, in addressing the league now, we have to remember that day when the Italians, when he was announced to come to the podium, we can't forget the whistling and the booing and the jeering of the thugs the Italians organized to be in the gallery. What a outer order set of people there. It was the first time that white man called white men savages, because Van Zyl and Tutulescu, when he showed to the president, the speaker, the senator, I said, listen, in the name of justice, silence these beasts. White man call white man beasts to make a black man speak. That was historic. That never happened in the world. Yes. And His Majesty walked to the podium, as we see, with the dignity of a Lion of Judah. He walked and he never even said, those guys who just keep him, never even him just open his mouth and say, well, I should have talked to in this language, but there is no other language I can talk to than in my native tongue, Amharic. Yes. And His Majesty knew why. Because the French envoy said, when I listened the words of the Emperor Haile Selassie I, it greatly pained our hearts. And then His Majesty took time out, beloved, remember in country under serious atrocity, but he took time out to speak not on Ethiopia's behalf only. Him come to defend justice for all small nations of the earth subjected to that kind of tyranny. That never happened before.
First time.
If you talk about something happened to you, and America go to the United Nations. Them a talk about what happened to America. Them no business what happened to Kuwait or Iraq. But I Majesty said the life of no small nation is safe if we go and bow to this kind of aggression in the world, you know, and no nation is safe if we subject ourselves to tyranny like this. So I Majesty made it plain, his presentation of the league, it was unprecedented. There was never a world leader where approach the league like that. And as Anthony Eden was trying to tell the ambassador, no, it is not correct. It is not proper procedure. Dissuade the emperor from going to address the league. And I Majesty said, listen, I must appear before that world body. And, you know, the excerpt of that speech, we see that the world, the youths of today should analyze that speech, read it, get the essence of the message, because His Majesty described the atrocities in such clear adjectives. Yes,
Pick a pin. I'm just going to read a little bit about the atrocities,
yes,
a little bit more from the same speech.
Yes,
he says, at the beginning, towards the end of 1935, Italian aircraft hurled upon my armies bombs of tear gas. Their effects were but slight. The soldiers learned to scatter, waiting until the wind had rapidly dispersed the poisonous gases. The Italian aircraft then resorted to mustard gas. Barrels of liquid were hurled upon armed troops, but this means was also not effective. The liquid only affected a few soldiers, and the barrels upon the ground were themselves a warning to troops and to the population of the danger. It was at the time of the operation encircling Macale were taking place that the Italian command, fearing a rout, and that's what you were speaking about earlier, followed the procedure which it now is my duty to denounce to the world. Special sprayers were installed on board aircraft so that they could vaporize over vast areas of territory a fine death-dealing rain. Groups of 9, 15, 18 aircraft followed one another so that the fog issuing from them formed a continuous sheet. And it was thus that from the end of January 1936, soldiers, women, children, cattle, rivers, lakes, pastures were drenched continually with this deadly rain in order to kill off systematically all living creatures. In order to more surely poison waters and pasture, the Italian command made its aircraft pass over and over again. It was the chief method of warfare. So this is an atrocity we don't talk about, is this sprayer system. We talk about the Jews who were gassed in small confined spaces, but we don't talk about how the Italians took what was being done to the Jews in those small confined spaces and did it on a nationwide level. They don't talk about the giraffe that died and the lions and the endangered wildlife.
The gazelles, the tigers, everything in Ethiopia.
Everything. Yes, talk to us, Rastafari.
The elders, I mean, Dr. John Melly of the British Ambulance Service said, this isn't war. It is not. It is the slaughter of tens of thousands of defenseless men, women, and children with poison gas. So, even from an outside standpoint, there were doctors and nurses from the Red Cross and the British Ambulance Service who were on the ground, who were witnessing this kind of atrocity. We remember the 19th of February, 17th, 18th, 19th of February, a time when Her Majesty would have given alms to the poor, given food, give them a treat at the palace. Because he was absent, Graziani decided, say, yes, they're going to have it done, and they're going to feed the people, and they call the infirm of the city to come to the palace. So you must know the blind, the crippled, the lame, the one-legged, the no-legged. Yeah, I mean, everyone came out because it is a day when the emperor would have fetted them with food and drink and money and everything. So Graziani said, yes, we can do it like the emperor would have done to them. You must know, say, the informer them tell them, say, the king would have done that. So do this and you will win the favor of the people. So they came in thousands. But you know, some of we decide, say, yo, our opportunity is to throw a grenade and get rid of that boy, you know. But it wasn't like one of the basketballer we know where the thing there, you know. If you just throw it correctly, you know, make it drop in the basket, you know, drop in him lap. So when he threw it from a position, probably not an advantageous position, but he tried. And the bomb, the grenade drop and roll under him chair. It explode, but him never get much injury. But you must know, say, when him move to safety, you know, the order was to kill, to open machine guns.
Yes.
The blind was machine gun, the cripple, the beggars, the man with the crutch, the man who crawled upon the ground, they were machine gunned in their thousands. That one writer said, and that day, blood was literally running down the streets of Addis Ababa. And he saw Italian women driving on the street, and the blood was just splurting from under the wheels. Like when rain fall, and you're driving on the water and it splashed to the curb. That was how the blood of Ethiopians were pushed aside on account of the atrocity of that February moment that His Majesty say we must remember. It was atrocity beyond. I mean, them talk about a Jewish Holocaust. They have not spoken about the Ethiopian Holocaust.
And I think it's our job as Rastafari creatives to let the world remember these atrocities, because I think the European Jews have done an excellent job of the world remember what people did in Germany and in Poland. And I think we as a creative have a responsibility. And I know that you're doing some powerful work with the Nyahbinghi chants. We're going to give you an opportunity to let people know where they can support your chanting and your family music later, because we are the Association of Rastafari Creatives, and we're all about using creativity to get the message out to the people. No matter how we do that, whether it's Nyahbinghi, whether it's reggae, whether it's painting, whether it's crafts. And I know I'm wearing this crown here. One can see this is a Ras Ivy to follow design.
But here I know the jazz. I'm going to interject because we're still at the League of Nations, you know.
Yes.
So I'm going to interject so we can put that on the back burner, because Her Majesty now having the awesome responsibility now, you know, of presenting his message to the league, you know. While he was presenting and all, you must know the pain that many felt. You must see the backbiting of all those who sit down there and know so them support Mussolini. And even when they decided to put an embargo on Italy and Ethiopia, not to be able to import arms into Ethiopia, they knew that Italy done armed already. It's like, yeah, take away my weapon and allow my enemy who is armed to still have his weaponry. So that was a betrayal. Yeah, that was a betrayal on the part of the league. And when Her Majesty pointed out that the whole covenant was broken, the covenant they signed, His Majesty said, what is there of collective security if we are going to sign a covenant that would prevent a member from infringing upon the territorial integrity of another member? How then can you sit here now and allow this to happen to Ethiopia? And you know the prophetic warning. Yes, I.
Stick a pin, because I just want to read a section that pertains to what you're saying there. His Majesty said, I should have procured still greater results for my people if obstacles of every kind had not been put in the way by the Italian government. The government which stirred up a revolt and armed the rebels. Indeed, the Rome government, as it has today openly proclaimed, has never ceased to prepare for the conquest of Ethiopia. The treaties of friendship it signed with me were not sincere. Their only object was to hide the real intention from me. The Italian government asserts that for 14 years it had been preparing for its present conquest. It therefore recognizes today that when it supported the admission of Ethiopia to the League of Nations in 1923, when it concluded the Treaty of Friendship in 1928, and when it signed the Pact of Paris outlawing war, it was deceiving the whole world. The Ethiopian government was, in these solemn treaties, given additional guarantees of security, which would enable it to achieve further progress along the specific path of reform on which it had set out and to which it was devoting all of its strength and all of its heart. So please continue. I just wanted to give that context in terms of the betrayal, as you spoke of.
Yes, Rastafari.
Well documented by His Majesty.
But remember now, a lot of people were in the gallery, you know. But when he saw the decision came up against Haile Selassie I and Ethiopia, a Czechoslovakian photographer, he was so irate that he shot himself before the General Assembly. Can you imagine? Someone don't talk about this, but this happened during His Majesty address to the League. A photographer shot himself. Now, if a man commit suicide because there was no justice in the world, and he being a Czechoslovakian, I presume he's a European, he shot himself at the League, and there was a lady. I'm trying to get my research as the Rasta Global Network and the Jazzmark. It's on your table now, because there was a woman of renown. She was outraged, and she sent out a communique advising all women of the world that if this is the world that we will grow up children into, she's asking all childbearing females to desist from becoming pregnant, because this is not a world for us to raise children in. So this woman was calling for a stop to be put on world population, because the action of the League is not right. And we cannot raise children in wicked environment like this, the action of the League of Nations. So ones were siding up with His Majesty out there, but the League of Nations failed in its efforts to stop Benito Mussolini. It was a case of, at one time, England start talking, and other countries, and Mussolini met them know, say, listen, and me rule the Mediterranean. So you say, I'll phone a little shit on it. Mine won't ask against me, you know, because me can deal with that. But we must also point out that Germany, Hitler's Germany, gave His Majesty arms. You see how that sound, Rasta? Germany came on board and gave His Majesty arms, airlift arms, and drop it where Ethiopians could have access to the arms. And
you shall have them in derision.
Yes, His Majesty smiled at one of the receipt of the shipment of the drops and said, the enemy of my friend, the enemy of my enemy has now become my friend. So Germany, it's like, all right, to the enemy, but no, you become my friend. So His Majesty point out that Germany as a country assisted Ethiopia with arms, you know, which many others failed to do, you know, and in Asrate Kassa's book, he pointed out to that, and I said, wow, I have heard it, but now I have read it from a position of knowledge that yes, Hitler had really supported His Majesty by providing him with arms. My elders usually say, you know, say, Hitler was one of His Majesty death angel, and we usually as a youth analyze, how could they say that? And now I get to find out that the same way in which they stood up against Haile Selassie I in the League is in the same order they were bombed by Hitler. That J.A. Rogers in his book said never before had an attack on one small nation brought so much accumulated evil upon all who were involved.
Well, we know that it was a precursor to World War II. His Majesty warned them that their failure to help Ethiopia would rely on on the German side, you know, Italy was on the fence as to whether they were going to be on the Allied side. So by Hitler sending arms to Ethiopia, he was trying to show Mussolini that if they didn't side with them, they would hunt them down in Africa.
Yes.
And so it was a strategic move on the side of Hitler, who was a very evil force, as we have stated. But it was also, again, prophetic, because it said the highest of himself shall have them in derision. So they were all fighting each other while they were trying to conquer the African. We have a question here from Suitu, who is asking where he can find the speech. And you can Google this speech, actually, right on your Google, Haile Selassie speech to the League of Nations.
June 1936.
Yeah, June 1936. It is available on different platforms, including, I think, Wikipedia speeches, as a world historical speech. I see our legendary DMV radio personality, Tony Carr. I am listening, good conversation. I see Justone, bigging up the
from Canada.
Yes, Kerry Knight, Give Thanks Kings. Yeah, so, you know, this is the type of programming at the Rastafari Creatives we bring. We are creating our own ecosystem online. We've bought our own real estate over on a Wix platform. So we have a members only platform where we post this type of content. So go to www.rastafaricreatives.com, become a member today. It's very reasonable in terms of, and we have our own social media, our own ecosystem that we're developing, because yes, Facebook Live is good, but anytime Facebook wants to censor or take us down, there's nothing that we can do, because Mark Zuckerberg is free to do what he wants to do with his platform. We have purchased our own platform, again, using the Wix infrastructure. But the great thing is that no one can censor the content on our platform but the Rastafari Creatives. So go to www.rastafaricreatives.com, and we're going to continue this conversation for a little bit longer. If you have any questions, put the questions in the comment section. We'll try our best to reach the comments. We want to thank everyone who's calling in from everywhere. If you want to just drop where you are watching from in the comment section as well, so we know what regions we can shout out. I'm here, my name is the Chazmach Kwasi Bonsu. I'm here with Ras Ivai Tafara, and we are examining His Majesty's speech to the League of Nations. So Ras Ivai, you were saying,
yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, man. So as we say, just 3 years, you know, after His Majesty make that prophetic utterance, you know, it's like Poland and France, you know, them first come up against and supported Mussolini, you know. They were the first one to be bombed. And if one's read J.A. Rogers' book, World's Great Men of Colors, him sum it up nicely. Queen Wilhelmina from Holland, you know, she fall also, you know, and you talk about England, Czechoslovakia, Belgium, you know, Norway, all of them who appeased Mussolini. Hitler tear them to pieces. So while His Majesty now was preparing for his victory, going forward at the head of the Gideon forces, their towns and cities were ravished. But when we want to say too that this prophetic utterance at the League placed Ethiopia, placed Haile Selassie I on a pedestal in the world. I mean, coronation brought the world at his feet as the Lion of Judah enthroned with his empress, a black royal family crowned before representatives of the world. But then, 5 years after, the world came up against him, and he prophesied against them, and his utterance of June 1936 made him Man of the Year. Time magazine recognized that, wow, this speech by the emperor, you know, this is a man where not just got talk on his own behalf, but he spoke for the life of all small nations subjected to tyranny. Yeah, so that speech, I think, earned His Majesty a spotlight in the world. Everyone knew then and knew of the Lion of Judah based on that utterance, and what took place after. So we say the speech of 1936, and as you mentioned earlier, the Jazz Mark, I went ahead in the 70th anniversary of this speech, organized a celebration at Scotts Pass Nyahbinghi Center. And we say it must be on our calendar. We cannot forget, because your His Majesty say, if Italy had conquered Ethiopia and the continent would have been in eternal servitude. How powerful is that statement? And how important is that victory over Italy to the African peoples? Because then, how would the OAU come about with Ethiopia not being the facilitator? How could all African advocates come to one place, one neutral place?
Exactly. No, it's very critical. And I want to just also strengthen that the Hoare-Laval Pact, which was a famous secret agreement between England and France to sell out the interests of Ethiopia, was made, and that was actually documented. It's called the Hoare-Laval Pact. You can look it up. And as Ras Ivi said, in terms of the Death Angel, London was bombed flat under the Blitzkrieg, as well as Paris was also bombed flat under the Blitzkrieg. And these countries were rebuilt by the United States of America during the Truman administration, with United States rebuilt Europe after World War II, because these places were literally bombed flat under the wrath of the the German warfare. Secondly, to strengthen what Ras Ivi had said, is that we have to celebrate this speech, and we, again, as Rastafari creatives, have the duty to ensure that the world knows about this occurrence, and the fact that this was an instance of prophecy being recorded, video recorded on a world stage, where we can see a man give a pronouncement and we can see the judgment manifest very clearly down the line. So we have a recorded instance of prophecy from the throne of David, again, signifying and solidifying that divine authority that was placed on this throne for all time as a liberation for the African continent. And if Ethiopia was conquered, as Ras Ivi said, we do not get the Organization of African Unity. We do not have an independent space that could mediate the disagreement between the Casablanca and the Monrovia group.
Yes.
Led to the OAU, and we do not have Ethiopia Airline and the connection of Africa via travel and transportation that we saw. And we may not even have the Rastafari movement in its present format, because then our emperor would not have conquered and given us that confidence that we now exhibit today. So very, very critical. I'm going to read another little excerpt, and then we're going to jump right back into Ras Ivi. And I have to commend you on the historical recall. So many facts that you're illuminating here with us today, and we have to really give thanks. The question of collective security, because we touched on it, and that's really what I want to read right now. The League was threatened, and remember that the League of Nations, because of this embarrassment, was disbanded and was taken down. So listen to this. It says, is it collective security? If is collective security, it is the very existence of the League of Nations. It is the confidence that each state is to place in international treaties. It is the value of promises made to small states that their integrity and independence shall be respected and ensured. It is the principle of the equality of states on one hand, or otherwise the obligation laid upon small nations, small powers, to accept the bonds of vassalship. In a word, it is international morality that is at stake. Have the signatures appended to the treaty value only insofar as the signatory powers have personal or direct or immediate interest involved? No subtlety can change the problem or shift the grounds of the discussion. It is in all sincerity that I submit these considerations to the Assembly at a time when my people are threatened with extermination, when the support of the League may ward off the final blow. May I be allowed to speak with complete frankness, without reticence, in all directness, such as is demanded by the ruler such as is demanded by the rule of equality as between the states members of the League. Apart from the kingdom of the Lord, there is not on this earth any nation that is superior to any other. Should it happen that a strong government finds that it may with impunity destroy a weak people, then the hour strikes for that weak people to appeal to the League of Nations to give its judgment in all freedom. God and history will remember your judgment. Rasai.
Remember 27 years after, when the League perished and the UN was established, Boboshanti, he was invited to lead the member states into that first sitting of the UN, because here is the man who appeared at the League. He's the most remembered head of state from the League, the only head of state to address, who is about to address both the League and the UN, the only. And remember, he said to them, and His Majesty is filled with humility. He's not a boaster. But at this time, I think him show a little tact, by saying, 27 years ago, I mounted the rostrum in Geneva. I spoke then to and for the conscience of the world. And history testifies to the accuracy of the warning I gave. So it's like him, I said, did I not tell you what would have happened to you? Did it not happen? Can you imagine them guys? Many of them were not at the League, but they knew the history. Okay, presidents and leaders go after 27 years. None of them exist who come back. But they know the history of what took place. And he warned them that we are here. It made them aware that we are here to build on the ashes of the League of Nations. And the League failed because it failed to listen to my words that I uttered then on behalf of collective security and justice for humanity. So His Majesty just tell them, did I not tell you what would have happened? And I don't know if he did a smile, but I think he was just doing his best to say to them, I had warned you and you did not listen. And there's a songwriter who wrote a song. And every time I hear that song, I wonder if this man was following the history. That there will never be any peace until God sits at the conference table. God was at the conference table and they never listened to him, and World War II happened. That world-renowned Church of God minister J. Herbert Armstrong say, what if the world had listened to this little great man? Would there be a Korean War, a Vietnam War, or a World War II? It would not.
It would not have happened.
God was at the conference table and them never listened to him. So what happened? The whole of them, just as I read, them had them cities and them towns flattened.
Yes.
And Ethiopia became the victor. But as you say, His Majesty could not have died because as a child coming up, we having his 129th birthday.
Yes.
And if he conquered death, he's the only surviving child from the womb of his mother. If he was able to conquer death and raise to life, then when he become the conquering Lion of Judah, where is thy sting death? Because if me a conquer death from me a little baby in the womb, then when me the Lion of Judah, wait, a little fascist guy can come around here with him army and him bombs and conquer. I know. The Lion of Judah has prevailed.
Has prevailed. And His Majesty, today it's very normal for us to look at the United Nations General Assembly and see world leaders making declaration. It's important to acknowledge His Majesty is the first world leader to ever address an international assembly. So all of those world leaders are following on the blueprint that His Majesty had set from that time. Oftentimes, Africa doesn't get the credit for setting these international trends. So we want to make sure that everyone is well aware that His Majesty was the first head of state to address the International Assembly. And as you correctly stated, when he later addressed the United Nations and reminded them about this speech, he had to point out the accuracy of his speech. And that United Nations speech was made into the famous song by the Rastafari creative Robert Nesta Marley,
Yes.
The War.
Yes,
It was the same speech that Rastafari is referring to, which was a speech that was made when His Majesty deposited the OAU Charter in New York himself. He walked with the charter to put it officially into the annals of the United Nations.
Nice.
And he gave this speech, which also said Africans will fight if necessary.
And we know we shall win.
Because we are confident
in the inevitable victory of good and evil.
So we give thanks.
Who is like unto Haile Selassie the First? I mean, our people should recognize him for his great contribution. I mean, we're saying spirituality and as my Majesty said, religion is personal, but the world should acknowledge His Imperial Majesty for his outstanding contribution to humanity in all walks of life. There's never been another head of state that was so revered, so honored, so decorated by even enemy countries. Italy gave him the color of the Annunziata when he visited even after the war and tried to find out if him have up anything against Italy. He must say, no, man, listen to me, man, I would not have visited. And they gave him that color that made him actually a cousin of Italy.
Yeah,
so Her Majesty has proven beyond doubt that he's the African champion, the foremost champion of black liberation. And all when our people now see him as divine, you must recognize that Africa had a leader that all Africans celebrated his Earth Day in his 80th anniversary for his outstanding contribution to Africa and the world. So, when we read this history, man, we have to recognize and give credit where credit is due, that our Divine Majesty Haile Selassie I of Ethiopia, whose reign is considered and must be considered as the golden era in Ethiopia's history, when we see all what is happening up to now, and if Prime Minister Abiy and the younger Ethiopians acknowledge Her Majesty's speech as to when he speak about tribalism, he said we have to put away tribalism lest we open the doors to international outside intervention. So Ethiopia must, and I think Ethiopia must really go down on their knees, because Ethiopia need a healing from the 1974 atrocities, Ethiopia need to kneel in the presence of the Ark of the Covenant, in the glory of Ethiopia, the land of the gods, to say we are sorry for what we did to the Lord's anointed Emperor Haile Selassie I, who received the 7th Isle of Anointing November 2nd, 1930, as the Lion of Judah, King of Zion, King of Israel, Light of the world.
The seal on the throne of David, because there were none after. And we can argue none before. So what I want to do now is to really examine, as a Rastafari nation, as we emerge as a nation globally, we are setting different rituals and rites, we are setting different holidays. How do we solidify this occasion, which happened in June? How do we work it in? Is it something that should be only Nyahbinghi? Should we reach out to the mansions? How do you think we could best highlight this as a day that to be recognized by the global Rastafari family?
Sometimes we have Bingi, and most people think that Bingi is in-house, just belong to Rasta. So when we celebrate some of these events like a Garvey Day, we take it out to public forums, public spaces to celebrate and to pass on information. So June 30th, 1936, in reminiscing, I think it should take the form of a public event where we give education as to, you know, the significance of Her Majesty's speech, the significance of his role at the League of Nations. I think it should be a public forum where we invite ones of knowledge who understand what took place and can speak highly, and we can have copies of the speech, just like Rasawata from Dominica asked, you know, where can he find the speech? You know, pass it on to all the different ones that youth can come to understand, because in 1990 to 91, you know, I remember I was in Holyoke at the time. And then with that Gulf, when the Gulf War actually started. But prior to that, in Jamaica, I was outside knitting and the television was on because a meeting was going on to decide on a coalition to invade Iraq. So the UN Secretary General then, James Baker, I heard a voice on the television because the meeting was going on, and the voice said, there is no precedent for a head of state speaking in this assembly. There is no precedent for a people being victimized and abandoned to the aggressor. So I said, wait, not seeing the TV, just hearing the voice. I left my work, ran inside to see who was talking. And I start, when I look, I say, UN Secretary General James, I said, hey guy, you better talk who says so, you know. Me start bad him up telepathically now. I say, yo, you better talk who said them words, you know, boy. Hear him now. These words were not spoken in 1990. These words were spoken far back in 1936 when Ethiopia's country under Haile Selassie was invaded by the fascist Italy. Me say, oh! But here where the guy quote the speech for. He was quoting the speech to win over the forum that them to decide that an injustice is taking place with the Kuwaiti people. And we all must look at a big nation coming up against a small nation. So don't make what will happen to Ethiopia come happen to Kuwait now. So in other words, he was using the sword of justice for an unjust cause, because we know what the cause was about in Iraq was nothing about protecting Kuwait. It was about their own greed and lust to tear down Iraq. So Her Majesty's speech came back to be used, and I would say wrongly. When it mattered most, them never listened to it, you know. But now he wanted to use it to lure the nations to vote on behalf of the nations going in to invade Iraq. So Her Majesty had set the tone in the world, Rasta. His many speeches at the League and at the United Nations. They are speeches that can lead the world in becoming a better place. Talking about collective security, territorial integrity, talking about nuclear proliferation. His Majesty want them. That's the whole thing about this nuclear, you know, the life of no small nation is safe if we have so much destructive capacity in our midst. We have to stop these things, use the money to get rid of hunger, poverty, and disease from the globe. Her Majesty want them and set the tone, beloved. But
we
God
have a question.
The God King came and they never listened to him.
Perfect, because we have a question from Kofi Arma. He says, please, what is the meaning of Rastafari and why Rasta hail him as divine? So just briefly, Rasai, if you could answer, what is the meaning of Rastafari and why Rasta hail him as divine? He's writing in from Ghana.
Ras means head, is one of the Ethiopian titles that mean head. In Haile Selassie's position as royalty, he was one of those races of royal blood. He received that title in 1916 at his first crowning, September 27th. And he received from the Judgement, he became Ras. Tafari. Tafari is birth name, meaning one is who is to be feared, meaning one who is to be revered, you know. And as Psalm 78 say, the Lord who is to be feared. So we always look upon it and say, if that should be written in Hameric, the Lord who is to be feared, it would have meant it would have meant Ed1 Rastafari. So yeah, to Ras mean Ed Tafari, one who is to be feared. Why we say Haile Selassie the first as divine? Because a promise was made to David that Christ would come and sit upon the throne of David. So when we look, the only place in the world that there was a throne of David was in Ethiopia, and a royal descendant of David. So when all the nations of the world, 52 nations, gather in Addis Ababa to witness his grand coronation, and 49 devout priests, bishops, and monks chanted 9 Psalms of David continuously in turn, and he was enthroned and received title King of Kings, Lord of Lords, conquering Lion of Judah, King of Zion, and anointed with 7 oils, and received the 7 ornaments of his coronation. And the multitude shouted, Hosanna, Hosanna, blessed be the King of Israel. We knew then that this was the manifestation of Christ's reign upon the throne of David. Hence, Rastafari see Haile Selassie I as divine, the God King who came and ruled on the throne for 44 years.
Give thanks. And we have here Pancho Topari tuning in from Chile. He's just giving a big up, one black love, all Walamat Pachu for Origins people, for the Origins people. We have ones coming in from the Commonwealth of Dominica, Ras Sweetu. Big up yourself, Ras Julio. I know he's in Italy. Big up Ras Julio. So this is an international Facebook Live. Yes.
International, but the Jazzmack, you said something earlier that there are Italians who loved Haile Selassie I.
Yes.
I must mention that I happened to met one of them. Okay. He is an Italian, his wife is an Irish, and they came to Jamaica to be enjoyed in sacred matrimony. Yes. But he was asking, he wanted a Rastaman to conduct the ceremony, and destiny have it that I was pointed to him through a marriage arranger who was checking both us, and someone in the community pointed I as the man who they know could have represented that portion. Yes. So I was the one there, but we had to invite a marriage officer because I was not legally enshrined to give him the official documents. So yes. He said, don't worry about that, Rasai. I will have that marriage officer, but he will not say anything at my wedding. All he will do is to give the document. I want you, the Rastaman, to read us our commitments and everything in consummating this marriage. So when this was done, I asked him, I said, Darius, why did you call for a Rastaman to consummate your wedding vows? He said, Ras Ivai, I am an Italian. My grandparents went to Ethiopia as part of Mussolini's armies. Can you imagine if Haile Selassie was not this man of peace and forgiveness and forgave my family who went there in an unprovoked war? I would not have been born. So I owe thanks to His Imperial Majesty Emperor Haile Selassie I, because I would not have been born on this planet in this time.
Please touch on that, because after the war, when Ethiopia was victorious, driving the Italians out of the realm, His Majesty gave a special Christ-like edict. Can you please elaborate?
Oh my, that speech, when His Majesty walked to that podium and to give that victory speech, and we must tell once, that His Majesty was asked by a reporter in Jerusalem when he was on his way in exile, and he told them that if he was not confident that he would have returned to Ethiopia victoriously, he would not have left. And he also said, His Majesty also said that justice, no matter how long it takes, shall rise like a morning star. So when Her Majesty regained entry as head of the Gideon force, because some ones have the narrative that, oh, and when the British successfully defeated the Italians, he went back and regained his throne. No. Her Majesty went and fought as the head of the Gideon force, along with Wingate and all those other British guys and things. And Her Majesty won this victory as head of the Gideon force. So Her Majesty, when he stood up and said, people of my country, render not evil for evil. Him say, on this day with men on earth and angels of heaven could not have known or foreseen. No, when a man said that, men on earth, nor angels of heaven could not have known it, But yet, Haile Selassie tell a man, say, him shall return victorious. So who is he? Him have to say later on, not even men on earth, nor angels of heaven could not have known. So angels in heaven never know this, Him say, I owe thanks and unutterable from the mouth of man to the loving God who has allowed me to be here amongst you. Since it is so, let us not render evil for evil. Let us take them weapons, make them return by the way they came. Let them realize that we as Ethiopians different from them. So, one reporter wrote, in one of them big cosmopolitan magazine to say, Haile Selassie is plain as if he's God. How could Italy carry out so much atrocity and him country and him get up a talk, surrender not evil for evil? No, man, that man here act like him a God, man. Because in the history of the world, his uncle Stephen, remember Stephen was stoned to death, and him did ask forgiveness to those who stoned him. Remember Christ, when he was on the cross, according to Bible history, said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. His Majesty came, and we can, look at these three to say atrocities were carried out. Even when Her Majesty sent the order, that they must not touch one Italian after the victory, Casa had lost his youths, Casa had lost family members, Her Majesty lost family members too. But when Casa get the order, Casa did not have some boy in him grasp, And Casa just got a boy, hear this, whap, whap, because he might avenge the death of him sons. And when a second command got to Casa, Her Majesty had to say, Casa, if you touch one more of them Italians, I shall have you court-martial. So not even his own people could believe that Her Majesty could have been so compassionate. Him said to the Italians, those of you who wish to stay, because remember, these youths sell out everything them did have, All them are looked to if you send back for them like a girlfriend to come live with them, in the land of paradise where Mussolini promised them, Mothers kiss them son goodbye and say, I will see you in this land when victory is ours. They were certain of this victory. So when some youths say, them on the feet, defeated, because remember, Graziani did tell, when De Bono, because De Bono did around the army, But when Mussolini, when he must say, boy, Mussolini, boy, the victory now come yet, because remember Mussolini never go Ethiopia, Afraid. When De Bono tell him, say, boy, communication, the man, the Ethiopian, them are vicious, Vicious is like when we check, so we kill them off, them rise up like ants again. Like Mussolini said, listen, man, Graziani, take over from the boy. So Graziani decided, I hear him first statement, we will have Ethiopia with or without the Ethiopians. It's better now him install the poison gas. And for those in the Caribbean who know when the banana spray plane did come round, come spray banana plantation, that's the only picture I can paint for you to realize it was like those sprayers come round to spray banana, but it's not banana they must spray. They must spray a poison to kill the very ants where in him hole. The very fox where the rabbit in him hole come out because the gas are going to kill him. The fish in the rivers and the lakes and everything are dead. The animals out there, the monkeys, the gazelles, the birds. It's like humans. Everybody are there. These guys were bent on having Ethiopia for the Pope of Rome because they wanted the throne of David. They bombed 525 churches.
Yeah.
Why did you bomb 525 churches? They were in search of the ark. When they kill Abuna Krilios, when they kill Abuna Petrus, it was about asking questions around the ark, and these priests would not say anything. Because Ethiopia have a replica of the ark in every church.
Yes.
But what they knew, that when them go and see this ark and fire shot pan it and nothing, and it just bust up, them say, no man, I don't eat that, and that we are look for. Because this thing's supposed to have supernatural power. We need it, so them decide and start bomb every church, knowing that if the ark of God is there, it will remain unconquerable. And them want that to take back to Rome. They want the scepter of authority to take back to Rome. They wanted the triple crown. They wanted every symbolism that shows that pertains to Christ. Yes. So they want all these things that shows that yes, the Davidic covenant now is with Rome. How dare them? You know, so the atrocities was too much. And Haile Selassie said to them Italians, say, you see those who don't want to stay, you know, bomb enough of my bridge them, you know. You tear down enough of my terrain, you know. You bomb many of my churches them, you know. But I understand so now great builders, you know. So you see who want to stay, I'm going to allow you to stay. And I'm going to build back. I'm going to help build back. But we must also point out the Judgement that England, you see, I tell you, say it was a snake on the grass.
Yes.
England wanted now to take all the bounties that was left by Italy and own them to care about England. So England become the back and belly rat, as we would have termed him in Jamaican phrase it. The traitor. I want to take these things as loots of war. I Majesty had to say, listen, what you think? You think that we get rid of one enemy and install another? No. England I Majesty had to do everything in his powers to get the world, even the American president did have to intercede to make them know, say, based on the street, it now go work. I Majesty had to file against England because England wanted to come now be the protectorate over Ethiopia. What a wickedness. So them never really come fight, you know, as you say, is when them see others join up with Germany and decide, say, right, you know, we have to go help Haile Selassie get rid of Italy. Out of Ethiopia. So they were fighting their own war. I remember His Majesty said to the guy them at England, you know, hey, when you claim say St. George our patron saint. In Ethiopia, St. George is our patron saint. So here the dragon is now in Ethiopia. So if your patron saint is really St. George, well, join me, join Ethiopia in getting rid of the dragon. So we give thanks, a great chapter in our history.
I wanted to just touch Genesis 49 for one small moment, which was the blessing of Jacob to Judah.
Yes,
and this part which says that Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. You are the lion's cub, Judah. You return from the prey, my son. Like a lion he crouches, he lies down like a lioness. Who dares to rouse him? This is the part here. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until the coming of Shiloh.
Rastafari.
And we know that Shiloh is peace on earth. So when His Majesty for giving the Italians and making a militant stand for peace on earth against even his own people. We saw this again when he refused to take action against the Derg regime and the student uprising.
Yes.
Militant stand for peace, because we know that war begets war. If I kill you, your relative is going to want to come back and kill me, and blood begets bloodshed.
Yes.
So someone would have to take a militant stand for peace to end the cycle. And we see that His Majesty on numerous occasions
set the tone.
Made that militant stance, because sometimes we feel the man who kills is the most brave.
No.
This is what we have learned from His Majesty, that this militant stand for peace, which the Rastafari people have taken from that time, because we're not a movement or a nation known for gun violence or warfare. Rastafari has spread through the globe through word, sound, and power. Rastafari is one of the fastest growing faiths that has not been spread through violent arms or coercion, but by perfect love, word, sound, and power. So as we wrap up this event and we come to a close, I want to just...
But just before we wrap up, because we don't want to forget this most important aspect of what took place during His Majesty's stay in Bath at Fairfield.
Touch it.
For those who go Fairfield, it's like you're going a country, you know. His Majesty go, as we say, it was the old Roman town where His Majesty buy the house there. The house there was on the verge of being closed down. We want to salute all the races and ones who came up and do them best to try and save it. I don't know what is happening now, but we need to keep a check with the Ras Mandela and others in England who have spearheaded, because they wanted to close that house for many moons. His Majesty left it for the infirm of the city. All these old whites who never have nowhere to live, His Majesty left that house for show you the love. He could have sold it and get millions of pounds. But His Majesty left it with all the furniture. And you know, say Queen Elizabeth sent for His Majesty plate and fork and spoon and chair and everything of all the wealth where she have. She knows if to get a spoon that once touched the lips of the Lion of Judah would have been such a blessing. She sent God thief them out of the house. When we went there and inquire what happened to the furniture, the lady told us that Channel 4 did a documentary on it, and the Queen had sent her envoys to remove these important royal paraphernalia from the house in Bath and bring it up to her palace. But I also want to say that during the war, you know, Mussolini offered His Majesty through him envoy 10 million guineas and a palace to live in exile. His Majesty said, wait, I did not come to Geneva to sell my people with money stained with the blood of Ethiopians. I came to see justice for my people. So His Majesty, and you know that coming like when the Satan did come to the Yahshua, and I said, look, we can give you all them things, man. Look there. Look at all the wealth and things we can give you. Just turn the stone here into bread, man. And he said, get thee behind me, Satan. I equate that moment when the envoy came to His Majesty and said, look, we can give you the money where you have to put in at the bank. You can just live off what them call it, the interest. In a palace in exile. I want you just give up the struggle for Ethiopia. And His Majesty damn them. Even Hollywood and them companies offer him a role in a movie titled Flight by Night. A emperor runs away to give money. His Majesty said, get away from there. Who dare you know? You know, so His Majesty in everywhere has stood up with dignity of a lion, with integrity, with courage. As it is said, he ran away and he was a coward. And even some Ethiopians carried a narrative, because I watch videos and hear Ethiopian fighters say, oh, he was a coward. No Ethiopian emperor had ever run away from his people. But His Majesty say, sometimes things that demand courage is interpreted as an act of cowardice.
And we have to also remember that he was establishing the EWF at that time to help with the war effort. He was supporting the guerrilla fighters in Ethiopia, supplying them with arms and information about enemy movements. He was an active part of the resistance while he was at Bath, also translating the Bible from Ge'ez into Amharic so that it could be read by the people, and several other initiatives that were undertaken while in exile. So he wasn't just sitting down and waiting for the British. Also,
he was writing volume 2 of his autobiography.
I was just going to say that a lot of
which is a book that every Ras should really try to
I
have.
was just
Both
going to say
volumes,
that.
volume 1 and volume 2. Volume 2 speaks clearly of the years in exile. You
Yes.
know,
And also about the attempt to bribe him that you spoke of is also
exactly.
documented in
And
volume 2.
and he speaks clearly of how the British was being that little underhanded snake trying
Yes.
to worm itself into becoming a protectorate over Ethiopia.
They
So
tried to conquer Ethiopia after. And the other narrative that we have to dispel is that the British, yes, they came and they gave assistance, but the soldiers they used were primarily African British
exactly.
soldiers from Kenya
Yes.
and from
Yes.
other British things. So it was black people who were fighting to
On
liberate
behalf of
Ethiopia with some British officers who were there. Yes, Wingate and some of the upper level officers were white.
commanders, as
Yeah,
commanders.
but the soldiers that liberated Zion were Africans primarily and predominantly. So we
Rastafari.
have to make that clear. We also have to state that His Majesty used the United States to offset the British influence in Ethiopia. And this is why when America became more prominent in Ethiopia, because His Majesty reached out to the United States to come and try help them balance the British who would not
Yes.
leave.
Yes.
So
Yes,
he
Rasta.
was playing them again, having derision, because America had become the new world power after World War II, and Britain couldn't fulfill their desire to control Ethiopia because they didn't have the resources America did. And His Majesty got America to spend a lot of resources to offset the British influence. So he's very wise in his doings, and an example for all of us as Rastafari to use your wise mind. It's not just brute force, because yes, the Almighty could have manifested as the strongest man alive, 6'10" or 7'2" or
Yeah,
big
yeah.
muscles, but he came as
A Goliath.
yes, as a lion. But no, he came as a man short in stature,
Yes,
and,
like a little David. And that is
yeah,
why he said, it is good that you are here to record this picture of me in my palace garden in Addis Ababa. People who see it throughout the world will realize that even in the 20th century, with faith, with courage, and a just cause, David will still beat Goliath. Could not have been said any better. The modern day David did beat Goliath in the form of Italy and their allies, Rastafari.
So that being said, I want to give you an opportunity to any final songs before we seal this great occasion. This was very beautiful. We had ones tuning in from all over creation. Again, this is going to be available on the Rastafari Creatives platform. You must become a member to access this and the other content that we are having. We'll have clips up on our YouTube page, and we'll also leave some clips on social media. But if you want to see the full version of this and many of the other platforms and things, we are creating our own ecosystem again online at www.rastafaricreatives.com, where you can get the latest updates. You can subscribe. Even if you don't have money to become a paying member, you can subscribe and you can get updates on events. You can get access to the newsletter that we put out that tells you what's happening around with Rastafari Creatives. And we are really building this from the ground. This was one of the recommendations out of the 1983 conference at the University of the West Indies, that the Rastafari in the creative industry must come together for the benefit of the Rastafari nation. So we are happy to fulfill the call of our elders. I want to thank Ras Ivai Tafari for his almost photographic memory of these historical events. And trust me, this is just one piece of history. Ras Ivai can do this with the birth of His Majesty, come straight up through the life. So we really give thanks. I just want to give you an opportunity for any final words. If there are any final questions, you can put them in the chat. If not, just drop a flames in the chat. Let us know that you're still with us. or a question. But while you do that, Rasai, please, final songs.
Well, you know, as I am introducing Sir Rasaiva as a historian, I always say, you know, Ras Iva is just a son of His Majesty who love him so much. So anything that His Majesty do, I try to find out, to source the information, because I came up in Rastafari at a time when there were so much propagandas against Haile Selassie I in the era of the 70s, you know, when the Mengistu regime unleashed all these evil against Haile Selassie I, backed by outside forces. So it was incumbent upon I and I in school to be able to convince the teacher them say we're right in declaring Haile Selassie I. So that has prompted my research into finding out the facts about His Imperial Majesty when them send charge of money in a Swiss bank, and then we will find out the whole of them thing and know it was lies until today it has been revealing, but many still, the lie that still a reverberate, and it's our duty to present His Majesty from a position of knowledge, you know. So that has really spurred Iman in finding out the truth, that when I open my mouth to talk, it is factual, it's to the point. You can go do your research, you can go, because truth will swim like oil and in water. So I just imploring all the sons and daughters of Rastafari globally, all the brethren them from the continent we are listening in, all over the globe. Let us be resolute in our doing. Let us, as Rastafari, set a good example and know that if we are emulating His Majesty, we have to do good. We have to mold good character. You know, his speech and leadership is important to all I and I who aspire to be leaders. And as Rastafari, Ras meaning head, it means say as head, you're a leader, and you have to, you know, walk in that line where His Majesty speak of, you know, leaders are not people who try to dominate others. Leaders, you know, whatever them practice is the same thing they would want for the people. And if they want people to do good, them as leaders have to be good, be doing good too. So Rastafari have to set good example, and it's that we are look forward to. Sons and daughters of Rastafari doing good, walking in the footsteps of His and Her Majesty. We have the best couple on planet Earth to emulate. Let's emulate them in no uncertain manner. Let us follow their footsteps, look at the things they have done for humanity, and walk the way there. You know, the Jasmak spoke of, you know, I'm on work in terms of presenting sacred chants. All this is about loving Haile Selassie I, wanting to please him, to sing his praise songs, you know, as David wrote and Yared wrote sacred hymns. It's something that I have a love for, to be able to praise him from a Rastafari perspective. I mean, the album Our History was preceded by Ark of the Covenant. Both albums are now packaged in one. The Jazzmack, without having all this information out at the top of my head, I'll definitely pass it on to the eye. And
I was going to ask, where can they purchase and where can they support Nyahbinghi works?
Check with Rastafari Creatives. I'll be sending the catalog, and I'll be sending the information as to where, you know, one can purchase. I'm saying these two albums packaged in one is really an item that every Rastafari and African-centered home should have, based on the contents of the composition, realizing that this is done by a family that is in praise and worship of Kadamawi Haile Selassie I, and whatever strength is given outside of producers getting their share, it will benefit a Rastafari family who is dedicated to the liberty of Rastafari in no uncertain manner. So we give thanks, and we give thanks to all sons and daughters who are now preparing for the 129th anniversary of the birth of Kadamawi Haile Selassie I, and we look forward to that, and we know all over the globe the celebration will take place. So we give thanks. Give thanks to Jazzmack for being a good partner in sharing this glory of His Majesty, providing the written data and some nice insights in solidifying the thing in a nice package, in a golden package fit for the king.
Yes, this was an honor for Iman. I tell the eye that the eye is one of Iman's inspiration. So to do this history with the eye was greatly inspiring to I and I. And we will follow up with Ras Ivi to make sure we have some links to his works for Rastafari Creative membership. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you like the page so you can get the notifications when we're going to go live again. Make sure you follow us on our social media, Rastafari Creatives, across all platforms. Again, go to www.rastafaricreatives.com and make sure that you subscribe to the page, become a member so that you can connect. Because again, we do not want to rely on Babylon infrastructure to get out our message. Rastafari control media, Rastafari control narrative. That's what this is all about, making sure that we are telling our own story, because until the lion tells his story, the hunter will always be glorified. With these few words, we give thanks. We ask to let the words of our mouth and the meditation of our
heart
be humbly and truly acceptable in the eyesight of true and living eye, with his imperial majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I, King Rastafari. Perfect love and blessings, family. One perfect love on behalf of all Rastafari creatives. Big up Sister Isla, Mama Kua for the DMV for helping with the technical assistance here. We want to big up our Alpha and Omega President, Raswida Maya, Sister Tamara, for all of the strength, Sister Olivia. Raswida Maya is the head of the Education Department, which has sponsored this Facebook Live. And again, this is a great honor, and this is a continuation of many ongoing lives that we'll be having on various topics as we look to inspire and to control the narrative of Rastafari in this digital age. One perfect love, family. Yeliai?
Selassie.
Rastafari.
And we hear that having a rippling effect right across the globe.
Yes, and again, we couldn't have done it without the Ras Ivi, so perfect love. This stream ends at this moment. Love.
Rastafari. Give thanks.
Love. Aye.